Hey guys, and welcome back to Battlefront Updates and some more content regarding the next Star Wars Battlefront game. In this video I just wanted to talk a little bit about the game modes in the current game and which ones I think they could either keep, remove or just modify for the next game. Although this game did get a lot of critique for launching with lack of content, that was mostly due to lack of maps and depth in gameplay, but game modes was something we had plenty of. It launched with 9 multiplayer game modes, and then Turning Point was added shortly after that, and then we have 4 other game modes that was added through the DLCs, which I will also talk about. Some of those could fit very well in the next game, and some of those are very specific for the maps. But I'm simply gonna talk about every game mode and say what I think about it, and if I think they should keep it or not. I can say that it's pretty hard to talk about in regards to keeping a game mode or removing a game mode, because a lot of the game modes are popular in their own ways, so it's hard to say that they should cut down the amount of game modes when they already have a lot of them being played. But this is simply just gonna be my own thoughts about each game mode and what they could do with it for the next game, and if I think they should keep it or not. First off, we have Supremacy, and I think this is a little bit tricky because it depends entirely on how they implement the next game. If they decide to lean over a little bit more on Battlefield, I think it would be better to have something like Conquest than Supremacy, but this entirely depends on them making bigger maps that are not linear and that you will actually be able to reach multiple zones at the same time and capture those. If that is the case, I think they could remove Supremacy and add Conquest instead, but if they still decide to go with the linear gameplay in the next Battlefront game, then Supremacy is a good replacement for Conquest, as Conquest would never work on the current maps in the game. Moving on, we have Walker Assault, and I think this is sort of the key game mode in this game that a lot of people have loved, and it's kind of become the Conquest of Star Wars Battlefront, if that makes sense, which is why I think they really should keep it. They could modify it, whether it's using another vehicle and not the AT-ATs, or maybe using a ship, or they could modify it a lot of ways, but the whole assault part of it, where you actually need to capture something in order to get time to attack a big vehicle, that's the part I think they really need to keep. But before we know exactly what the next game will contain in terms of eras, it's pretty hard to say if Walker Assault, as it is right now, would fit or not. But I do think that the whole concept of Walker Assault, the way you attack a big vehicle, you save up Y-Wings, that's a really good mechanic which they should somehow keep in the next game. Moving on, we have Fighter Squadron, and I don't like Fighter Squadron. I don't like flying in this game, and I don't like flying in pretty much any games. So for me, they could gladly remove it, but I do know that they need to have some sort of flying game mode. And in that case, I think it's better to have something like Battle Station's first phase, or Infiltration's first phase, or even something that's similar to the space battles in the old games. That would make it more interesting for people like me who don't really like to just fly around and kill people. But it also depends a lot on how they implement the flying mechanics, because I think that Fighter Squadron could be a lot more fun if they made the flying mechanics a bit harder to use, where you couldn't just lock on, shoot, and just repeat that all over. So they need to have some sort of flying game mode, I completely understand that, but Fighter Squadron, no, I think they would be better off creating something else. Blast, well, that kind of speaks for itself. Pretty much every multiplayer shooter needs to have a team deathmatch game mode, and I like to jump into Blast quite often when I don't want to care about objectives and just kill enemies. So yes, Blast should be in the next game, definitely. I wouldn't mind if they even increase the kill count a little bit, but I think Blast as it is right now works fairly well. Next up we have Cargo, and this is something that I personally think they could skip. I know that a lot of people like it and that Capture the Flag is popular in a lot of games, but I just think that there are better replacements for this, and I don't really like Cargo a lot. I don't like Capture the Flag in either other games either. So this is a very personal opinion, but I think Cargo could be completely removed and be replaced by other objective-based game modes, which could be the last phase of Infiltration, you know, Extraction, Drop Zone, and other things that are sort of similar to Cargo, but not really the same. Moving on, we have Drop Zone. And this is something I really like. It was a quite unique game mode to Star Wars Battlefront. It was even in the beta and a lot of people liked it. However, Drop Zone took a big turn in Bespin. Normally it's 6 versus 6, which works fairly well, but in Bespin you actually get the chance to play Drop Zone with 16 versus 16 players and 3 drop pods at once. And this might be the most fun gameplay I've had in this game so far. It's pretty rare to come across because you need to play the actual Bespin rotation, and you usually get to play Sabotage or Walker Assault or Supremacy, so getting Drop Zone is quite rare. But I really think they should take the Drop Zone from this game and make it into a bigger game mode in the next game. It doesn't have to be all the way up to 32 players, but at least to the point where you don't just fight about one pod at once. It works well, but I would rather see 2 versions of it or just a big version, because I think Drop Zone in Bespin is a lot of fun. Next up we have Droid Run, which, as some of you might know, is one of my favorite game modes, and I actually think they should keep it as it is right now. It was quite horrible at the start, and the way it was back then would not have worked, and that's something I would have asked them to scrap. But now that they changed it to the way that you just need to hold all 3 of them to get points up, I think they could keep this game mode as it is right now. I've had some very intense games in this game mode. I remember one of the streams I actually got a draw. It was like 57% to 57%. So I think Droid Run is a quite unique game mode, as the droids are actually moving around, and you don't get camping the same way you do in other game modes where the objectives don't move. So Droid Run, for me, a big yes. So now over to Hero Hunt. I think if we would ask the community here, the majority of them would say scrap this game mode, don't keep it, no one likes it. And I completely understand that. And if the game mode isn't in the next game, I also understand that. But from my personal opinion, I love Hero Hunt. It can be very frustrating at times. Some people can absolutely dominate, but on its peak, I think it's a lot of fun, because I'm fairly good at the game mode, which means that I can get a lot of wins, I can get a lot of heroes, which makes it a lot of fun simply. And this game mode has gone through so many iterations in this game. They've changed the system of how you pick the hero like 3 or 4 times. So I'm not sure how it could be changed or completely remade for the next game, but I like it. I really hope they will keep it somehow in the next game, although I do understand if they don't keep it at all. Next up we have heroes versus villains, and I think this type of concept will definitely be in the game somehow. But now with the talks of Hero Blast, I'm not sure if they should add both of them, both Hero Blast and Heroes vs Villains, or if they should just have Hero Blast. But I think they should keep both Heroes vs Villains and Hero Blast, simply because Hero Blast would be a game mode where you can just play heroes over and over and over, and you don't have to play very tactically. You can just rush in with the hero, die, and just pick a new hero and just keep playing as the heroes. Whereas Heroes vs Villains is a lot more tactical, since you only have 1 life with each hero. I do, however, think they should modify it to not have infantry unless you die with the hero and then spawn in as the infantry. There shouldn't be 3 infantry soldiers and 3 heroes, but I would rather see maybe 6 versus 6 heroes, and then you can spawn in as the guards or infantry when your hero has died. That would make it a lot better, and it would remove the frustrating part of playing as the infantry against the heroes. And lastly, on the vanilla modes, we have Turning Point, which was added a little bit after the release of the game. I think it's a fun game mode that's quite different from Supremacy, but I'm not entirely sure what to make of this game mode in terms of the next game. I think they would be better off maybe remaking Turning Point slightly, or merging it with Supremacy somehow. I'm kind of unclear about what I think about this game mode. I think it's fun to play as most of the game modes in this game. I mean, I would pick Turning Point over something like Cargo or Fighter Squadron every day of the week, but I'm not sure what my stance is in terms of keeping it for the next game or not. I mean, more game modes are better to some degree, but if they want to leave some room to add completely new game modes for the next game, it might be one of the game modes that they need to either remake or scrap. But now I want to talk a little bit about the DLC game modes. Some of them would fit better and some of them would fit not too well in the next game. First off, we have Extraction. And this is probably my favorite game mode in this entire game, and I know a lot of people agree with me on that. So I think they should add extraction, or at least something very similar to that, such as payload in Overwatch, to the next game, but in the base game. So I want to be able to play this on a bunch of different maps. I also like the fact that they have heroes limited, so that the heroes become something very important, both to keep alive and to kill. That could be tweaked, and extraction could be even longer, maybe even 4 phases. But extraction as the base of it, where you need to defend a shipment or you need to disable a shipment, I think has been a lot of fun and has caused a lot of intense gameplay moments. So extraction, please keep that in the base game for the next Star Wars Battlefront. Moving on, we have Sabotage. And this is probably my least favorite game mode in the DLCs, because I think it's fairly unbalanced and it doesn't really make a lot of sense that you can play really well the entire game, but then the other team can just win by keeping all their heroes alive and pushing that last zone. So for me, I wouldn't mind if they completely scrapped Sabotage for the next game and made something else that included the heroes instead. And next up we have Battle Station, and this is a very specific game mode obviously, so I can't say. It all depends on if the Death Star will be in the next game or not. I think that if the Death Star isn't in the next game, they could use the first phase as some part of the space battles. The second phase would be a little bit like Extraction, but with R2 instead, and I'm not sure. I think R2 could be included in other game modes, so I think the second phase could probably be scrapped. But the third phase, however, which is obviously the most specific one to the Death Star, was so well made in this game, in my opinion. I thought it was really good. I didn't expect a game mode in multiplayer to work so well for a trench run, so I really wish they would keep this somehow, whether it's just a single player mission where we can fly the trench run, or if they actually add the Death Star entirely to the next game. I really hope they do it somehow, because it would be a shame if we can't play this really epic trench run 1 or 2 years from now, because no one plays this old game and we can't play it offline. And lastly, we have Infiltration. The first phase is kind of meh, but it makes sense due to the actual setting of Scarif. And the second phase is a little bit like Sabotage. I would say the second phase is not too good either, and I don't think I would like to see that. But the third phase is the best one in my opinion, and I know a lot of other people enjoy that as well, because I think it could definitely replace cargo. We could have a data tape phase instead of cargo, as I think it brought in a lot of interesting mechanics. First of all, that you actually have 3 cargos at the same time, and you need to just deliver one of them in order to win. And I also like the fact that when you dropped the cargo, and either by jump packing or by dying, it stayed on the floor and the enemies couldn't actually disable it, but you need to wait for the timer to run out and then it gets put back in the original spawn. So this is a good cargo in my opinion. I think the normal cargo is quite boring, whereas the last phase of Infiltration is really good and something I could definitely see myself playing a lot in the new game. But that is all the multiplayer game modes, and one last thing I wanted to talk about are the multi-stage game modes in general, since those were added through the DLCs. I am sort of torn about them. They are very cinematic and cool to play, and they are a little bit similar to the operations in Battlefield, so I think they should keep it somehow. They could have maybe one really well thought through and good multi-stage game mode in the base game, a little bit like operations, but I don't think it's something they should do too much. They should not have multiple multi-stage game modes, because personally I don't like too much when I have to fly when I don't want to do that. That's the main reason to why I'm not a huge fan of the multi-stage game modes. Especially the Death Star, because I don't like being forced to fly and play on the ground in the same game mode. So that's the biggest problem for me, but otherwise I think at least one big multi-stage game mode would work. So those were my thoughts on the current game modes and what I think they should keep. In terms of new game modes that I could suggest for the next game will probably be in another video, because as of right now I don't really have any good ideas for that, so I'm gonna have to think a little bit about that and probably make a new video called what game modes they could add for Battlefront 2. But I'm really curious to hear what you guys think about the current game modes and which ones you wanted to keep, change or completely remove. So make sure to leave a comment below about that. But other than that, thank you very much for watching, and as always, may the Force be with you.